Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be ranking most of the Pillows studio albums at 2 in the morning. I have a very fucked up sleep schedule, so yeah. And I say most because I haven't listened to all of them, obviously, and I will actually make a row for to just keep track of the ones that I haven't listened to. But I've again listened to most of them, even like their Avex era stuff. And funnily enough, one of the reasons I got Apple Music in the first place was to listen to the rest of the discography because for some reason Avex, their like Avex era stuff isn't available on any other streaming platform besides Apple Music. I don't know why, but again, you cannot listen to their entire discography unless you are on Apple Music. So, yeah. First is, in my opinion, their best. Happy Bivok. I think a lot of people can agree with me on this. This is their best record. It's just extremely upbeat. There was no bad songs. There's not even any decent songs on this record. They are all great J rock, like slash punk mixture of J rock. They are just phenomenal track after phenomenal track. They are all bangers. Even the like slow ballady tracks, like even like the deep cuts that aren't really on FLCL, like Kim Deal and Backseat Dog and Our Love and Peace, are all phenomenal tracks. And again, this is just a great album from front to back. And keep in mind, I have no nostalgic connection to the Pillows, and yet some of their tracks sound like I've heard them before. When I haven't, I know I haven't heard of them before because I haven't heard of the band. I have not even seen FLCL up until up until like this month. I legit watched it this month, and yeah, FLCL really uses the Pillows music extremely well. And yeah, FLCL the anime is also phenomenal and great. But yeah, again, I have no nostalgic connection to these songs, and yet some of them do sound very nostalgic to me. But yeah, again, just flawless, basically, J rock front to back with basically no bad tracks. So yeah, amazing album. Next is Runner's High, and I know a lot of people disagree with me on this. Again, I need to stop saying this because it's just my opinion, but I'm gonna put it in S tier. Some people say this is like a very inconsistent record. I don't think it's very inconsistent, actually. I think at worst, it just has two, like, kind of weak tracks. And I say kind of because they're not that weak. Midnight Down, and I think the other one's called Basket Case, something like that. It's the second to last track on the album. But again, even then, they aren't that weak. They're fine. No, they're not even fine. They're good Pillow songs. What am I saying? They're still good Pillow songs, and I'm just gonna spoil it. The weak tracks on this record are better than some of the best songs on their later Avex records. But yeah, don't tell anybody I said that. Next is Smile. I haven't listened to it yet. Next is Thank You My Twilight, one of the more popular records from them. And yeah, this is A tier. And again, a lot of people disagree with me, and a lot of people might not like the mixing on this record because it is very harsh in terms of mixing, especially in terms of like a Pillows album. In terms of like the mixing, where most of it is just very well balanced. This is way more high end focused. There's not really much bass on this record, and when it is there, it's not like full bass. It's just like present bass. But that's what I like about this record. It's very different in terms of mixing compared to basically all of their other records. But again, that's what I like about it. And also, one of the singles from this record that I forget the name to because it's such a long title. It's like White Guitar, Black Hair, some shit like that. But again, like the single from this record that's kind of big is phenomenal and is extremely emotional. Has one of the vocalist's best performances ever on any song from them. So again, just a phenomenal track. And also the title track, of course, Thank You My Twilight, probably one of the most popular songs from them. Is no, not one, probably it is one of the most popular songs from them, and for a good reason. It has a phenomenal guitar solo, just memorable hook after memorable hook, and I love the chiptune synth. It's just great. Now next is a B-sides record. So technically this isn't a studio record, but even then, this is going in S tier because it really highlights the diversity of the Pillows, of the Pillows music in general. And it also encapsulates, I think, their best era, which was from like Please Mr. Lost Man to Thank You My Twilight. It just wraps all of that discography and all the B-sides and all the stuff that didn't make onto the album in a nice bow in a really tight track listing. So yeah, again, just a very, very good B-sides collection, and I recommend basically anybody listen to any of the albums that are on the S tier row because they are all phenomenal. They are really, really good. And also, I think Beautiful Picture is one of the best Pillows songs. It incorporates shoegaze elements, surprisingly, which I don't think any other Pillows song really has. So, yeah, that's something. But also, just, again, the guitar solo is one of the most unique on any Pillows song ever, or period. It's just a great guitar solo. And again, just the guitar lines, everything, the shoegaze elements, as I said, just everything on Beautiful Picture is great. So, yeah. Next, Penalty Life. I've only listened to it once. But even then, I'm just going to say I haven't listened to it because I haven't heard it enough to really give it a proper ranking. Next is Turn Back. Again, only listened to it once. Can't really give it a proper ranking. Next is Good Dreams. Some people say this is like one of their best like late era albums. Honestly, I'm inclined to kind of disagree. Like, there are some really good tracks on this record. Walking on the Spiral is a very fun time. And the kind of sequel to Last Dinosaur, which I forget the name to, is a very good single and amazing song. But again, besides that, there's not really a ton here. I mean, I guess New Year's Eve is also great with some great guitar lines, as I said, and just a very chill and just easy to listen to track. But again, rather than that, there's not really a ton here I really want to go, like, come back to and re-listen constantly. I do really like the album cover, though, and I will say this, I think their, like, late 90s to early 2000s records do have the best album covers, and then after this, like, after My Foot, it just goes downhill. So yeah, and I will point this out with like their other records as well. But here comes My Foot, and honestly, I know this is probably the hottest take of this entire video. Yeah, I really like My Foot, and I think it honestly holds a candle to even their like late 90s stuff. It is that good. I mean, I know a lot of people will say like The Generation and Mighty Lovers aren't that great. And yeah, they're probably the weakest tracks on the record. However, it's kind of like the same thing with Runner's High. They are still really good tracks and are still catchy enough for me to enjoy them. And again, the highs on this record are just so goddamn high. It equals basically some of their late 90s output, in my opinion. I mean, tracks like Sayonara Universe are just so melancholic and great. It just brings back that melancholy from their late 90s records that I really like. And same with My Girl, the document version. And also, March of the God is a phenomenal instrumental that is a great time. Just the entire later half of this record is great. And also, Gazelle City is a very fun closer with a just very memorable harmonies at the end. And again, it's just a very fun closer. And yeah, I'm putting it up there. And also, My Foot is a phenomenal album opener as well. I almost forgot to mention that. Wake Up, haven't listened to it yet. I will say, though, that this album cover is, like, terrible. This is probably the worst album cover from The Pillows. And that is saying something because, yeah, some of their album covers are pretty bad. I think this is one of their first records, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I haven't listened to it yet. Next is Pied Piper. This is going to be a little bit of a controversial take, even probably more than My Foot. Not even more than My Foot, but yeah, it's almost on the same level as My Foot, honestly. I'm putting this in A tier. I know a lot of people will find this record boring or just find it kind of mediocre because, it's the Avex era of their records. So, some people are just inclined to automatically believe, all the Avex stuff is terrible. No, this is proof of that. This is a very fun record. This is probably one of the most upbeat, if not their most upbeat record ever that I've listened to. There's really no melancholic tracks. However, I don't really miss them a whole lot on this record. I know that's saying something because I think their most melancholic tracks are my favorite. But still, again, Tokyo Bambi is a phenomenal single and is extremely fun and also introduces horns, which is pretty new to the Pillows, or not horns, but like trumpets and stuff like that, or just horn instruments, which is just, again, a very fun time. Really nice. Ladybird Girl is extremely catchy, has one of the most catchy, like, guitar riffs from any Pillow songs, in my opinion. It's extremely simple, but so catchy at the same time. And then there's, of course, the two other singles, New Animal and Pied Piper, which are also great introductions to the record. And also an underrated track, which some people might see as filler, I see as memorable, and especially the chorus with that guitar line that is a little bit buried in the mix because it is a more like one of their more like fuzzy in terms of production where it's kind of like muffled. I like Across the Metropolis a lot. It is just a very chill track with a, again, extremely memorable guitar line in the chorus that's a little hard to hear, but I really love it. So yeah. But here is when we get to the actual mediocre part of the Avex era, in my opinion. Because before this, again, Pied Piper is a great time. And again, I understand if some people don't like this record because, again, it is missing the melancholy and the kind of grunge punk aesthetic that is coming from the like late 90s records. However, at the same time, they do need to go in a new direction. However, I will say this is not the direction I kind of wanted them to go in because, yeah, Oop Hearts is a C tier. There is one saving grace on this record, and that is Beyond the Moon. I think that is a really, really great track, a phenomenal track. Honestly, one of the best to come out of the Avex era. But again, the rest of this album doesn't have really much to offer. I guess the closer, Primer Beat, is a kind of fun time. But that's really it. I don't really remember that much. Even the single, like Hybrid Rainbow After the Rain, I think it's called, I don't really remember that much about it. Again, Beyond the Moon is just a very standout track for me. I just really like a lot of the Pillows like longer form songs. Maybe it's because I just am used to them, because maybe some people don't like their like longer form songs and think they drag on for too long, but I like Beyond the Moon. It has a very memorable opening and just, again, very nice and pleasant sounding chords, and then with a very, very catchy riff that just repeats, and I like it a lot. And also, it has one of the best vocal performances from the lead singer out of like any of the Avex era songs, I think. So yeah, again, just a very emotional and great track. Probably the most emotional. No, not probably. It is the most emotional from this album. But again, the rest of it is just kind of mediocre. And this is what I was kind of fearing with the rest of their Avex discography. I haven't listened to Horn again, but honestly, I'm not really looking forward to it because I've heard this is their worst record. However, they do fortunately pick it back up again with Trial. And honestly, this is going ahead of here. This is like bridging into S tier. The only reason this is not going into S tier, honestly, no. Not even my foot is probably the hottest take of this video. This is the hottest take of this video. This is an underrated record in the Pillows discography, in my opinion. The only thing that I don't like about this record a whole lot is the mixing. I think this has some of the most muffled mixing and the most like weird, again, just kind of compressed sounding mixing out of all of the Pillows records. And this is what I say with like, this is what I mean with like the Avex era stuff. I don't know what happened to like the recording quality or like the mixing, whatever. I don't think the production really got like a ton worse. Yes, I think that they're like overall like the sound is a little worse from like the more grunge and like hard rock aesthetic from, again, or not aesthetic, but they're more like hard rock sound from their like late 90s discography. But again, I don't think that's mainly a production problem. I think most of it on this record, especially Trial, is the mixing, because again, it's just muffled and compressed sounding. It doesn't sound that great. I mean, it's serviceable, it's fine, it's not terrible mixing, but again, it just sounds kind of compressed. Even on the like more intentionally muffled sounding tracks, it still sounds more muffled than usual. And again, if this was well, like better mixed, this would be going like a bottom of S tier. And again, I'll explain why now. Mochi no Shi Nanai Guitar, I hope I pronounced that right, is extremely emotional. It's a 7-minute phenomenal track. And it's just, again, very emotional from front to back. I really love that track a lot. But even the singles like Revival and Energia, I think it's called, are great and very catchy. I wouldn't say they're like bangers on the same level as like the S tier tracks, but they're still great times. And again, just the entire album is very consistent. I really, really like the closer, Ready, Steady, Go. It's a very fun time, like with a lot of their album closers. And yeah, and also Trial is a good single as well and very catchy. And again, this entire album is extremely catchy and just great. Even though, again, I do wish they went back to their more like hard rock aesthetic, or I need to stop saying aesthetic, man. I mean, like, they're more like grunge, punk, more of that aesthetic that they had in the late 90s. I wish they kind of went back to that. I still like their more like catchy, more repeating riffs they kind of had in their really good records of this Avex era. But unfortunately, after that, we get another mediocre Avex era album, and that is Moondust. And I will say this is going slightly into B tier because the first like 3 tracks on this record are really, really good. The rest of it is just kind of it's kind of similar to Oop Parts, but at least it's not just like one really, really good track and the rest is mediocre. At least this has 4 really good tracks and then the rest are just mediocre. So it has that going for it. But yeah, this is just a very, again, middle of the road. Just, I mean, good, but not really all that much more than that Pillows record. Haven't listened to Across the Metropolis. Haven't listened to Stroll and Roll. Although I have heard this is just another mediocre Pillows record. Next is Nook in the Brain, and this is where they start to come back, where they actually sign back with King's Records. Although they did with Stroll and Roll, and I still haven't listened to that. But this is where I think they actually paid attention to like their music, and they actually kind of woke up. And their mixing start to get a lot better because the mixing is very good on Nook in the Brain. I don't really have a problem with the mixing. And again, I think this is bottom of A tier. This has more of a raw sound, and this is what I was honestly hoping for. This is that slight return to form for that late 90s period that they kind of went back to on this record. This has a very kind of raw sound to it with very grungy, very distorted bass, and again, just loud and just grungy, just overall signature to the sound on this record. But that's what I like about it. But yeah, very fun time. My favorite track is Pulse, a very emotional, again, very melancholic, very emotional track on the record that I like a lot. Again, extremely memorable opening guitar line as well. But next is Rebroadcast, and this is honestly going here. This is going up here, all the way up at the top of A tier. This is the best late tier album from them, in my opinion. It has their insanely catchy guitar riffs, a very memorable opener with Rebroadcast that really brings the Pillows back to a back to basics sounds. And while they don't have that like sort of melodic edge they had at the beginning of their late 90s career, again, I know I keep comparing it to like their late records to their like late 90s records like output, but it's hard to not compare them because it's just that good. Their late 90s output is just that good. They are just that phenomenal of records. But again, Rebroadcast is just a very nice time. I also like the more punk and, again, more grunge album closer, Before Going to Bed. And Fandango Star is kind of a callback to Thank You My Twilight with that little chiptune synth. And again, this is just kind of a more like reminiscent record, kind of going back to their roots, kind of going back to their sound of their earlier records, and I like that a lot, kind of like with Nook in the Brain. But yeah, and yet it's different enough to have those more like memorable guitar lines, have those more like memorable vocals. And I really do like the single from this record, the third track. I forgot the name of it, but that's probably one of my favorite late stage Pillows songs. But again, this is just a very consistent record. Same thing with Trial, same thing with like Pied Piper even. I think like most of it is very consistent. I know that's, again, people disagree with me on that, but still. Haven't listened to this, have not listened to this, have not listened to this. I'll just kind of go by because, again, I haven't listened to them. And I'll rank these when I have listened to them. But here we get to their late 90s records. This is where it all starts. This is where they start to get phenomenal and very good. And they just keep going until like 2002, or not even 2002. I mean, I haven't listened to Smile yet, but I've heard like that's kind of an underrated record for them. So who knows? Maybe it could have just gone until 2006. But this is where they really started to get good and find their footing. And Please Mr. Lost Man, this is bottom of S tier. I shouldn't have to explain why. Strange Chameleon is one of their best songs. Extremely melancholic, extremely memorable, with one of the most empowering and just orgasmic guitar solos ever. The build up to it is great. I love that kind of like Mellotron-ish sounding synth before before that like exploding guitar solo. It's just extremely emotional. I don't understand a fucking word they're saying because I don't know shit about Japanese, and I'll admit that right off the bat. But it's just such an emotional track. It just makes me like just so emotional, man. I can feel it. And next is Little Busters, which I will put up here. It is just a great time. Actually, no, I'm putting it up here. It's just a great time with a lot of tracks from FLCL. Even like the deep cuts like Nowhere, and That House is especially phenomenal. I heard it's like kind of similar to their like really early discography, like the more pop centric songs, but just more refined. And yeah, it is just an extremely beautiful song. Probably a contender for the most beautiful song from them, with also probably one of the lead singer's best vocals, period. And just, again, an amazing track from front to back. And I don't think it overstays its welcome at all. But also, again, like One Life is a great song. And also just, again, very nostalgic sounding, even though, again, I've never listened to these tracks before I started listening to The Pillows, because, again, I never watched FLCL before them, and I didn't even discover The Pillows from FLCL. I just kind of got into them. I just kind of found out about them somehow. I think it was just a recommendation on like Reddit or something, and then I just listened to them and said, okay, this is really good, and then I just went with it. But yeah, I'm really glad I did. Needless to say. I think the worst track on Little Busters is probably Black Sheep, but even then, it's very different from them. They don't have a single other song. I don't think that is just an acoustic stripped back song that is just vocals and acoustic guitar, and I do like it. It's not really that weak. I'm just saying it is the weakest on the record. So yeah. Yeah, again, just an extremely consistent record from front to back. That's what they really nailed during this time period. Just consistency, and again, just really great stuff. Just again, this is my album ranking. So yeah, again, I'll re-rank most of this stuff when I listen to like Horn Again and Wake Up, and Penalty Life More and Smile. But yeah, again, this is my ranking for right now. Again, disagree with me all you want. Argue with me in the comments. So I can say what your favorite Pillows records is in the comments. But yeah, that's basically it. And I will see you guys later. Goodbye.